Snow White is the newest live-action remake from Disney and will be out in theaters this weekend. This is, of course, an adaptation of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which came out almost 90 years ago. Sometimes when you think about that, that's a long time has passed. In this movie, you follow Snow White, played by Rachel Zegler, whose life is upended when the evil queen, played by Gal Gadot, shows up on the scene and completely takes over her kingdom and envelops the whole place in darkness. However, the evil queen is also envious of Snow White because she seems to be the fairest and truest in all the land, and that's not something that the queen wants. And so she wants to have Snow White killed, and eventually Snow White ends up embarking on an adventure to take down the evil queen and making some new friends along the way who could be allies in that particular struggle. The movie also makes some contextual changes to why her name is Snow White. In the original, it's because she was as fair and white as snow. In this case, it's because she was born during a snowstorm and she survived the night, and so her parents named her that, which also changes the context of being the fairest of them all in all the land, because she is someone who is just a very good person, and the goodness of her is what threatens the evil queen. And so it also acts as a bit of a reimagining to the original story. It's not quite a one-to-one or doing the exact same things. Going into it though, my track record with the live-action Disney remakes, aside from the first few, not particularly great. I don't think they all need to be remade, but also because I think that they're not often as, solid as the original versions were. But I go into every one of these with an open mind because you never know, maybe you might be pleasantly surprised. And in the case of Snow White, it's not a catastrophic disaster. I mean, I will say it's better than I thought it was gonna be. I also think, however, that it's not as good as it could be. And I think a lot of that has to do with how jumbled a lot of it feels. I'll get more into that in a bit, but I will talk about the positives first because there is stuff I liked. The best part of this movie, hands down, is Rachel Zegler. So she is very, very good over here. And that's not something that's entirely surprising because if you've seen the stuff that she's done so far, even when the movies are not particularly great, she is able to do a very good job with what she's given. And when it comes to the singing in this movie, she's proven that with stuff like West Side Story and with Hunger Games. So that once again is a talent that comes through over here. Because there are times in this movie where things are faltering a bit and she's holding this thing up like Atlas holding up the earth. It's quite impressive, some of the work that she's able to do over here. The stuff from the supporting characters, some of them was also not too bad. I liked Jonathan in the movie. You don't get a ton of time with him when it comes to some aspects, but he was nice. They added a nice dynamic between him and Snow White. Again, a very different one than, the original had. And the dwarves themselves, a few of them you get some really great moments with, especially when it comes to stuff with Grumpy and Dopey. There's some nice back and forth between them and Snow White that I thought was not too bad. The music is also quite good over here. It's from Benj Pasek and Justin Paul, who have done a pretty good job with stuff like La La Land and The Greatest Showman before. Once again, the talent does come through over here when it comes to the reprisals of songs and the original music that's been added. They did some nice work over there, and the musical sequences for the most part are not too bad. Visually also, there's some nice stuff going on when it comes to the production and the costumes. There's definitely, on a technical level, there's some solid stuff. Though that is a polarizing positive because there's also technical stuff that's not quite good, particularly when it comes to the CGI. Some of it is very wonky. And while there are some times where, backgrounds and effects look pretty good, there are also sequences where it looks pretty bad, and it's very obvious that characters are standing in front of a green screen because sometimes they're not fully properly blended into the background. There's a couple of times where you can actually see an outline behind Rachel Zegler, which was a bit off. When it comes to the dwarves, I would say the CGI is especially wonky because there is this weird uncanny valley effect happening with some of them, and it doesn't really work. They are definitely the one of the weakest aspects visually of the entire film. So that was very disappointing, especially because, they are a part of Snow White's story and they're on screen quite a bit. Like I said, the characters themselves did a decent job with, but yeah, the CGI was wonky. Narratively and tonally is where I think the movie does suffer quite a bit, because when it comes to some of the stuff going on with, the colorful sequences and all of the funny characters and moments that you get along the way, it's also juxtaposed with some dark stuff going on with the evil queen and things that she wants to accomplish and what she has done to the kingdom. And it tries to bring up these themes of rebellion and authoritarianism every now and then. I thought, well, these are heavy themes for a kid's movie. I guess you're not going to go fully into it. But there is a level of it where it doesn't feel like it fully manages to commit to either, because it keeps switching back and forth between those sequences, especially when it comes to the tone. And so there is a bit of whiplash when it comes to that aspect too. I think as far as weaknesses go in terms of the characterization, I would say the weakest of this is Gal Gadot. Now, I have liked her in things before, especially when it comes to her time as Wonder Woman. I thought she did a fairly good job as that character, and I enjoyed her performance in those movies. Here, I don't know what the choices made were, and I also don't think that she's the best person for this performance. It feels like a miscasting, and it's also something where the performance that she's giving feels very tonally disconnected to the entire movie. It feels like she's doing something completely different, and because of that, whenever she's on screen, it just doesn't feel like it organically fits her performance with everybody else in it, especially in the one-to-one scenes between her and Snow White. And that's something that I thought was a major, lacking element of this movie. And those are the things that I feel brings the movie down as a result. Now, granted, like I said, there are things to like about it, but at the end of the day, it is just okay overall. It's not particularly the best live action remake or anything like that, but it's not the worst one either. I think some would expect a catastrophic disaster after the run that they've had with these. It's not, but I also don't think it's a movie that I'm going to necessarily, rewatch a ton in the future. Kids, though, will probably really enjoy this movie. And if you do, and, some of your kids walk out with some high praise about it, really loving Zegler's version of Snow White, then you're probably going to be okay with it. I mean, that's fine, I guess. And I'm gonna give Snow White, this 2025 version, a 6.5 out of 10. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more videos very, very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies. There we go.